highlights once again, episode 3. And today I'd like to start by announcing that from now on, all WERA highlights happen bi-weekly, meaning every 2 weeks we're going to have highlights that are going to cover basically 4 races, 2 for GTE and 2 for GT3. I'd also like to inform that the next WERA highlights will only have 1 GTE episode, as it will be our last race for GTE. So with that said, we can start off with last 2 weeks with GT3.
Actually, let's start with GTE first because that happened first, right? So for a GTE race in Sebring, we have Shelby, Danny, and Gene for the lead fighting ever since the beginning. Danny quickly broke away from everyone, and Gene and Shelby kept fighting for like enough laps, and then what's it called? They actually pit on lap 10, and then Shelby and Gene pit 2 laps later, and then Fatboy took the lead, but then Danny took over with fresher tires after that, and then Danny actually spins 2/3 of the way through his gap, and then has reduced his gap within a second. Now he quickly pitted for new tires again on that lap, and then Gene pitted on the same lap, and then Shelby pitted and with Gene's undercut. That is enough to pass him for second. Danny spread his gap even more and finished uncontested, but Gene, losing control for a brief second, lost second place to Shelby and finished third. Most of the pack was really unaccounted for, but they were there.
Yeah, also with Nissan having DNF'd once again, really not doing very well for Nissan. The first time he DNF'd was DC. I mean, every time he's DNF'd during this season has been due to DCs, one of which he got 1 single point because he was lucky enough to gain back only a couple of positions, almost arriving dead last. Although the 2 other times he did DC, which we'll talk about the last time he DC'd later on during this highlight, he's basically not went back, gave up both times, and I mean, I don't really blame him. It's really annoying to get to just DC mid-race. It's really something that kind of bums you out, and actually from certain sources I've been hearing Oni might want to retire from at least this season due to him constantly DCing and basically being a bit of an issue for ProDrive, since Oni's one of their best drivers, yet if he keeps DCing, it's just not reliable for them.
That reminds me during last season. But anyways, let's move on to last 2 weeks ago, GT3 race.
Yeah, a day after the GTs were finished up, we started off with GT3. Only 5 drivers made it to the grid that time around during the race. It was a lot less. It was mainly a fight between Danny and Gene. Runaway Drive was able to keep with those 3 for about half of the race before getting a drive-through penalty for most corner cuts. But Matt held on to the lead by a small margin. After that, he made a mistake, and that saw him drop down several seconds behind fighting Danny and Gene. So pretty much left Danny and Gene fighting for the win till then. After that, Matt dropped back into the pits to go for the fastest lap. He had the gap to do so. Danny and Gene fought for the lead until the last lap, but in what happened then was Danny made a mistake, which led Gene to take the win. And so the results for that race were it was Gene followed by it seems Matt and Danny, then Runaway Drive and Mindhand's Enthusiast.
Yeah. Moving on to last week, 2 days ago, the GTE race, which actually was kind of a sad one, more of a sad race, because not only did Oni once again DNF due to DC, but Shelby being in top 3, I think he was even in second at a certain point, actually ended up just disconnecting mid-race as he was third. I think it was actually around the end of the race, which really was a shame because he had such a good position. He had gone down into third, if I'm correct. Don't quote me on that, I'm not sure, but I do know he was in third when he disconnected. I mean, he really had a good position, a really competitive position, and him having won one of the GTE races before, during the Hockenheim one, he really did sort of have a chance at maybe dethroning the ProDrive drivers. But of course, this DNF he had during Monza is definitely going to be a setback, and I mean, hopefully it turns out well for him. Maybe he comes back, maybe he makes a comeback and gets like first for all 3 of the next races. We'll really see, but yeah.
Well, that would take a massive effort from Shelby just to put his championship hopes alive. I mean, he's not far considering where he is, but that was a real thorn in his side, that race.
Yeah, definitely, and I mean, hopefully he'll at least be able to keep third. I don't doubt he'll be able to, because he's really, I mean, Shelby's really shown himself to be a really capable driver. Maybe, hell, one of the best drivers WERA has seen.
Yeah, in terms of consistency.
Yeah. And I mean, he gets very solid places. I mean, maybe he doesn't get first that much, but he
but his raw
speed
is definitely what makes him a really good driver.
Exactly. So it's really going to be interesting to see if he actually makes a comeback. I mean, hopefully, I wish him all the best about that. And yeah, I mean, I see him probably having the P3 secured at least. So
he has a probably twice. Yeah, I'm guessing looking at it raw, it looks like he has a twice gap over Fat Boy.
Exactly. Yeah, and he's with the most consistent drivers in terms of points. I mean, his first win was really something that kind of gave him a safety net for at least P3, and I mean, he's still in the podium, definitely still in the podium, so he at least has a chance at keeping the podium, which is a good sign, honestly, for
yeah, his consistency might lead him to solidating that P3 in Drivers' Championship. If he can attack both of the drivers, that's a question up for grabs. That's up for Shelby to decide. But he has the potential to do so.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, let's hope to see maybe an underdog take over the ones that always stay on top. I mean, ProDrive having won almost all of their competitions. It could be really refreshing to see someone new, a new face, kind of getting P1. Although right now it's really uncertain. Only time will tell.
Yeah, not to mention the battle for P4 down, all the way down to P11 in the standings is pretty hot. I mean, maybe a gap between all of them more.
Really, a lot of points fluctuating. You can see there's a lot of numbers that repeat themselves, like doubling, like 14, 16, 27 and 28. It's very close between those positions, but I mean, it may not be anywhere near the top 3, but it is very competitive between one another.
The scrap for the middle points between each race will be very hotly contested between the drivers, so you might want to watch out for all of those.
Yeah, we usually don't really pay that much attention to it, but it really is pretty interesting to see those middle places, because that's really where most of the battling happens.
Yeah, most of the action is located in the midfield.
Yeah, because we have up there in the podium, we usually have those record holders, which are kind of, I guess we can call them untouchable as of now. Although, I mean, we do see a bit of breaking with Shelby kind of getting up there.
Every driver has their breaking moment, but out of you
Yeah.
know what we've seen right now, Shelby is in that spot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, hell, if he doesn't win this one, he might end up winning next season. We'll see. I mean, for GT3, we've only got like one race left, and then it'll, you know, the future of Shelby is up for grabs during that season.
Yeah, he could
Fresh start.
3 and might probably make a nice little charge in there, see if they can gain
Yeah.
anything from it.
I mean, we're seeing a lot of new faces as well, so, you know, it really gives a lot of variety. I mean, LOL, Z-Man, Heaven's Flame, Jamburger, those three really new drivers, and I mean new faces, and
Jamburger was recently signed, right? I'm pretty sure
yeah,
by Joe S.
pretty
Yeah, he was.
sure. Yeah, Joe S. Yeah. But yeah, and as for the teams, ProDrive of course in first, then Roush actually in second, and Hoshi in third. Actually, surprised I'm not seeing Schaffer in top 3 this time.
I wouldn't be
Pretty rare.
surprised if Schaffer picks up the pace and pulls it back in
Yeah.
the next few rounds. But to see that they're in 5th place currently, battling with the likes of Emerald Overdrive and Hoshi is pretty surprising. I wouldn't
Yeah.
count that they would stay there for long, but from where they are right now, it's a bit of a surprise. Let's say that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting actually. Joest as well being 7th. Pretty sure last season they were pretty high up in the standings as well. The Rush division being 6th, kind of fighting with Joest. This is a pretty interesting. This could be a pretty interesting battle between the two, especially for GTE, as we have 3 races left.
Yeah, it's a little duel off between Rush and Joest, and it's a 3-way fight right now for P3 in the constructors.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting, considering it's like a 5-point gap between all 3 of them.
Yeah, and I mean, knowing, especially fighting Aston has always been more of a mid driver, although he's really come to impress at certain times, bringing Schaffer up to, I mean, P3, and I mean, they've done it in the past, so what says they can't do it again?
Tubi, have any words on the standings as of right now?
No, I actually don't, because I feel like retiring real soon, as I wasn't able to attend any of the races now, actually, as you see through my did not starts for all 3, Hockenheim, Sebring, and Monza in GT3. So
Yeah.
Never say never.
I mean,
Never say never.
well, there's one race left, so for him,
I mean,
to
it would be best
catch
for you
up
to
the
do a
pace.
showing. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess, but yeah, I mean,
You could
with the
still
current
grab
points,
like a set of points, which would be pretty alright.
he could probably get 6th if he's lucky enough to get first during that last race, with the points he gained from the first race he ever did, or the first 2 races actually. Having 27, he could probably bump up that with a good, 26 points, 25, depending on how well he does. But yeah. So yeah, about the GT3 race. The last week's GT3 race did have a couple of hiccups. We did have a couple of problems with the schedule, and for that, WERA has decided to start working on getting better communication between staff, as the issue was mostly from a schedule being wrongly placed. The times weren't updated, so it led to a lot of confusion, and that's mostly on our staff team's fault for lacking communication. And we've also streamlined the channel so that things can be found better, information can be found much easier. And yeah, apart from that, we can move on to the actual GT3 race. So first off, with Matt retiring for Pro Drive. All right, the GT3 race with Danny and John fighting for P1, and John finishing in first place, Danny in second, and Runaway in third, Demon fourth, and Mid fifth last. So, I mean, really good strike of luck for Runaway Drive, which actually got a P3 from that, which could be really good for him. And
considering where he was.
Yeah, and it could be a really nice bump up for ABR by Schaffer, which is their Schaffer's sister team. And I mean, it could really show what they're trying to do out here, kind of like Pro Drive and Joas being sister teams. And also, I'd like to add that Fat Boy has apparently been losing a lot of pace due to his lag during WERA races, so his fate is kind of undetermined for that.
Yeah, not just WERA races, across different.
Yeah.
He is losing a lot of time during the races.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's kind of worrying for him. He did really, I mean, that Fat Boy really does have a lot of potential, and it's kind of sad to see that.
Yeah, it's really sad to see that his potential just gets shafted by the equipment he's running on. Almost like Onisan in a way, but less, not as bad as Onisan, but you know, in the same way, in the same boat.
And hopefully, I mean, he'll end up getting past that, maybe finding a solution. But yeah. Yeah, and as for GT3, currently Pro Drive is dominating with 189 points, followed by Schaffer Rensport and ABR by Schaffer. And it's really interesting to see Schaffer and ABR have 10 points of difference, and maybe we may get a even bigger difference with the last race. Maybe ABR may actually take over Schaffer, and
imagine if the sister team took over the senior team. Just imagine if that happened.
Yeah,
that would be absolute scenes.
I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see that. We do have a couple of DNSs from Schaffer, so it's really possible we actually might see it if Runaway Drive ends up getting it.
Single-handedly, if Runaway Drive pulls the consistency for the team, he might manage to pull that gap back if Schaffer don't manage to score, or if they just don't score as much as they want to.
Yeah, especially with the Runaway having 49, followed by Aston, who is classed 5th and is the highest Schaffer Rensport competitor right now for GT3. With 33, that's a really big gap, so I mean, it's completely possible ABR will secure it. And yeah, so do we have anything else we want to talk about?
No, I think we covered most of the information regarding WERA and their situations across the last 2 weeks.
Yep. Alright, well, this wraps up episode 3 of WERA Highlights. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you in 2 weeks.